Hi everyone, it's Roger and Jeremy here from the What's on Disney Plus podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about The Great Mouse Detective. So this was a movie released way back in the early 80s. And I'm going to be honest, even though I'm British, I have never seen this movie before. It's been one that I've been wanting to see for years. I think I even remember seeing it in the video shop when I was a kid, but never pulled the trigger on it. I don't know if it's because it didn't air on TV very often or it just something about Sherlock Holmes just didn't appeal. But it was the first time I watched it. But Jeremy, what did you think of The Great Mouse Detective when watching it back again?
Yeah, because this is one of my favorites as a kid. I told you, off camera that I wore out my VHS tape because I just loved the story. I really enjoyed it again. Says it's kind of a hidden gem because it's in that era where you don't think a lot of Disney animation. It kind of fell in that first dark age, bronze age after Walt died, but before the Renaissance, where they're just trying to figure out anything. And if I remember right from the documentary I watched on Disney Plus, the was it Waking Sleeping Beauty? This
Yeah,
was the first movie fully released after Michael Eisner, Frank Wells, and Jeffrey Katzenberg took over. Uh,
right.
I mean, they released the Black Cauldron, but that work had been started before they got there. So this was the first one that did that, and it's
Yeah,
did pretty well. I it I remember seeing that, and they basically said if this had bombed like the Black Cauldron did, we wouldn't even have the Little Mermaid because things were getting bad for the animation division at the time. So I'm glad it did, moderately well because it wasn't a smashing success in the 80s, but it clearly has a cult following that I'm a part of that
yeah.
did incredibly well.
Yeah, because looking here, for me, I think the problem was that it was just I don't there was something about the story where I was just like I just wasn't that kind of into it. It just was one of those things of like, okay, so we're just kind of running through it. Okay, he's not Sherlock Holmes, he's kind of going through it, and I don't know. I think I'm obviously watching so much stuff with Sherlock in now. You look at it and go, well, it's quite a little bit off from what it was. I understand roughly where they were going, but I don't know. It was such a weird little story of what they were doing with this movie, and obviously with the kid being like kidnapped and all the and then kind of trying to track it down. But yeah, I don't know. It was a strange one. Again, the thing is, sometimes with these kind of movies is when I think because it's so trying to be so stereotypical British, it actually probably put me it would it sometimes that ends up putting you off because it's going,
Yeah.
well, it's just a load of stereotypes. And therefore that kind of didn't really appear. It's like, well, I don't want to watch a thing where they're just kind of pretending to be in, I don't know. There's sometimes with like, especially with obviously American views of English stuff, I think some people still think we live like that from the
Yeah.
and so I don't know if that was maybe a reason why I didn't quite click with it because it just seemed so like stereotypical idea of what England is and what I don't know. It just didn't quite catch my attention.
Yeah, I understand that. I grew up in the southern United States, and we have some really bad stereotypes for there, and people bring them up all the time, and they find out, and I'm just like, you do realize that I don't actually own a pair of cowboy boots. Not all of us ride horses everywhere. Um, there
See,
are worse stereotypes than that I'm not going to get into.
yeah. See, I'm going to see how it was. It was kind of. I know this was the thing for me. Like when I traveled around America years ago when I was backpacking, there was that kind of weird thing of I found like Montana and Wyoming to be more of what I would consider to be like sort of the southern cowboy kind of thing area, which I hadn't really put two and two together. And like Texas and down south was much less like cowboy than like the north. So that was just I mean that was my own. It wasn't until I saw it in person of realizing how different that
Mhm.
was.
Oh yeah,
And that's just me
Texas.
as an outsider. Yeah.
Yeah. Texas is the odd one because it's like multiple countries when you're
Mm.
there because you got the east where it's very close to the bayou and does a lot of that stuff, and then the west is a desert cowboy kind of area, and then in the middle you've got the old oil fields and some of the other stuff with it. So Texas, you could experience 4 or 5 different countries and never leave the state.
Yeah. I do distinctively remember Texas being a very different kind of place than I ever imagined it. And again, like that's the thing for me of maybe sometimes with like the things that are set in London and stuff. Sometimes it can ring true. Sometimes it's just like, oh, you've really gone for. I mean, we've got another episode that we're going to be doing about Rescuers Down Under, which kind of falls into that same category. But yeah, that was the one thing I did find with the Great Mouse Detective. You know, a lot of it's basic stuff that we've seen dozens of times before, but I wasn't blown away with this movie. I kind of it's even now, I watched it like a few days ago, and it's one of those things that going, oh, what there is like nothing really comes to mind. It's quite a blank, and that's quite again because I've not got that nostalgia goggles on for this movie.
Yeah. I think if you watch it as a kid, you'll still love it as an adult.
Yeah,
If you watch it as an adult, I don't know that it'll ring true for you. It obviously doesn't for you. Some other people it might, but
yeah,
it's there's nothing inherently wrong with it at all. It's a fine way to spend an hour and 15 minutes.
yeah,
It's short.
yeah.
It's something I could easily throw on for my kids, and I guarantee you, my oldest will be rapt with attention. Um, for
That is the great thing with Disney Plus is it allows a little bit of to try these ones out. Because when you've got to pay money for them, because when I used to spend my 50 pence to get my free Disney or my cheap Disney VHS when I went to the video shop, you tended to sometimes stick with what you knew rather than what and if it wasn't on TV very often or anything like that, then if it wasn't maybe pulling in the ratings, because that was the other thing, quite easily like companies might have been like, that one's not pulling in the ratings, we don't show that one as much. Yeah, so you go, oh no, I'll choose something I've already seen before. And so this one was definitely one. I always remember it being on the shelf. I think I even own it on Blu-ray. I went because it recently got released. I think it was at 2015. I think I brought it because I need to have all of them because I haven't seen this one. I think it's still in the cellar.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say because looking here,
it's typical 80s fare, so
yeah,
it's not the the triumph of the Disney Renaissance we'll see a little bit later with Little Mermaid, but it's got its bright spots, but like I said, even with the nostalgia glasses, it's not one that I look back and go and can quote every line of it, like some of the older ones, or some from
yeah. I mean that's it. I mean just
right when Walt was around to the Renaissance.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is we were right in that zone of they were trying to work out what they were doing. I mean, it's quite interesting to see like Vincent Price was the voice of the enemy, was it Ratigan, which I thought was I did like that. I did like that whole aspect.
He's got a great villain voice.
Yeah, it kind of instantly kicks into that. And I'm just looking here, Fidget being that that sort of bat. I did like. Here was the one character of like going, okay, that one's a little bit different, a little bit more funny, and I did like that kind of dopey sidekick to the villain. It doesn't that just basically it never does it properly.
Yeah, he's kind of like the Igor in Frankenstein.
Yeah. I mean, I think as a whole, like I say here, it says here like the scene was like they did start using CGI, and it was a bit of a first test one. But I did like some of the earlier ones with the CGI where they're testing stuff out, and they're testing it, but they're also not really trying to push it too much.
Right.
They're trying it, but they're trying to keep it quite traditional because they know it's quite jarring with how it looks. And I think that's the trouble with some of these now. I mean, we all laugh at like Toy Story, but Toy Story has evolved a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas this was essentially nearly like 10 years before Toy Story came out.
Right.
But definitely, because I'm just looking here now, at the time, it had a budget of about 14 million and it pulled in about 38.7 million and was generally considered to be, it was kind of, well, I've just seen here, it was accompanied with the short clock cleaners, but it was, I think where it was on VHS, because they re-released it multiple times.
Right.
And, it did get some good results at the time. And it's like here, the movie only pulled in a 50 million, and it was an inexpensive success after the underperformance of like things like American's Tale. So it's definitely, yes, the Adventures of the Great Mouse Detective was what they also called it. But no, it is a really strange little movie. And I mean, as I've got older, I think I've started grasping more of an affiliation for Sherlock. I never really was a big fan of him as a kid, but I think obviously the one with Benedict Cumberbatch really kind of caught my attention. I know this isn't necessarily based on the same character. It is, and it's like a really like they live underneath, and he takes on the. It was like
it's a children's mouse version of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. Like, well, why not? It's like that kind of weird thing. You go, well, he lives in the building with Sherlock.
Yeah.
But he isn't Sherlock, because
No.
it would have made more sense if it just been Sherlock. Basil, but I suppose they wanted Basil so they could copyright it. That was the only thing.
Yeah, I was about to say, because Sherlock Holmes is in the public domain, so they can't really copyright him. They could, but if they put it there, it's like, oh, we're doing the same thing, just different.
Yeah, it was one of the things. I'm really glad. The thing is, I enjoyed watching it back, because I think I've been wanting to watch it for so long. Of going. And this is where I've been like, I enjoy doing these kind of things of going back and watching some of the ones that have some gaps in my Disney knowledge, because, there are so many over the years, and, you get to know certain ones so well, but it's so easy for a movie just to slip through the net. And this was definitely one of them. And I am really glad I've seen it. I wouldn't watch it again. I mean, if I was to, I'd probably give it like a 3 out of 5. It was very slap bang right in the middle. Nothing wrong with it, but nothing memorable about it either.
Yeah, I think I give it probably a 4 out of 5 personally, but I think a lot of that has nostalgia in it from loving it as a kid.
Yeah, because I think as well I think especially for me growing up, I had a lot more emphasis on the ones from the 70s, which we would watch a lot more. And I think that generally it seemed to be the 70s and the 60s ones were much more better than the ones from the 80s. And
that's true, yeah. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I think this is probably one of the better ones from the 80s. And then, of course, 89, they hit Little Mermaid, and everything just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, but we'd love to know. What did you think of Basil the Great Mouse Detective? Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, you can go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. You can also help support the channel as well over on Patreon and on YouTube channel members, where they get access to these a little bit earlier than everybody else. They also get to vote on future episodes, and if you're at a certain level as well, you can also recommend movies for us to watch. So there we go, guys. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys soon. Laters.